Hi, good morning. Thanks for participating in Move Redmond's candidate interviews. Can you please introduce yourself and the position you're running for?
Hello, my name is Vivek Prakriya. I'm running for Redmond City Council position 2.
And what inspired you to run, Vivek?
So, I started going to council meetings last September, I think. I tried to go to one council meeting just to see what does council actually do on a week-to-week basis. I found the work so interesting that I came back a second time and a third time, and I started reading documents related to the city, like the budget, the comprehensive plan. And I was like, wow, I'm weirdly entertained reading these documents. Maybe council is something I can think about in the future.
All right, thank you. Okay. So what's your preferred way to get around?
My preferred way to get around, really depends on where I'm going. I'm a student at University of Washington, and I take the 542 like pretty much every day to get to UW, and that's really convenient because parking is expensive at UW. Because the 542 drops me off right at the university, and it's also a lot faster because commute lane, bus lane, and I try to pick transit whenever possible. But sometimes if I need to get to downtown Redmond, I drive because I'm in one of the areas in Redmond. I live in a neighborhood right above Merrimore Park, where the closest transit stop. You have the 51st bus stop, but the closest light rail stop is almost as long of a drive to get to that stop as it would be to drive into downtown Redmond. So if I'm getting to downtown Redmond, or if I'm getting anywhere in the area, I'll drive, or I'll run even sometimes. Like if I need to get to Merrimore Park, there's like a cut through, and I can just run or I can just walk in.
Nice. Yeah, we understand that there's not always a transit stop that works for everybody close to their house. If you're elected, what are your top transportation priorities for Redmond City Council?
Absolutely. I think this is a really, really exciting time for transit in Redmond. My overarching goal, I feel like you have to start from some kind of frame of reference. And my overarching goal is, make transit a viable option for the majority of Redmond residents. Mm-hmm. And by viable option, my thesis around public transit is that if transit takes maybe 20 or 30% longer to get to where you want to go to, folks will take it. But if transit takes 2 or 3x longer, folks will just drive or use some other mechanism to get to where they need to go. Because people act in their own self-interest, and that's why for me, like, to come here today, I drove because it would have taken a lot longer to go take the 2 line from the one of the overlake stops to get here. And that means that we need to solve the first mile, last mile problem, right? Because we have this infrastructure now. We have the light rail, we have bus systems in Redmond, but actually getting to these systems is difficult. And how do we do that? I think it's we need holistic solutions to get to there, right? Making it easier to bike, protected bike lanes. We need maybe electric scooters. I think Bellevue has a system where they have this thing that can come pick you up with an app and then take you to a transit stop. I think Redmond should try and implement that. I know there are some days at UW where I don't know. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to walk the 1.5 miles to get to my bus stop. I'm just gonna drive. But if there was an electric scooter at the top of my neighborhood, that was a shared system I could take. I would do that, and it would save me 20 minutes a day, and that would be wonderful, right? We want to make public transit a viable option for all because it has a twofold benefit. Number one, it reduces carbon emissions. What is the number one source of carbon emissions in our community? Is cars, right? Personal vehicles. That's number one. But number two, it makes the air cleaner, and it also reduces traffic congestion on the haul, which is something that a lot of residents care about if you go knock on the doors.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vision Zero is this policy goal saying that no one should be killed or seriously injured on our streets. The city council has adopted a Vision Zero resolution several years ago. What would your approach to implementing Vision Zero be?
What would my approach to implementing Vision Zero be? So I'm a very, very data-driven person, right? I study math, and I look at the numbers on everything. So if we want to get to zero, we look at all the accidents that have ever taken place. We look at the highest probable causes of accidents in the future. We can do some kind of statistical modeling on this. Let's say that it's predominantly at a few intersections. Then we need to change those intersections, right? Because maybe there's no protected bike lane. Maybe it's on like West Lake Sammamish where, like, trust me, I've ridden my bike. It's very scary to ride your bike
Yes.
on West Lake Sammamish, and we need to put in a bike lane there. But the city has a limited amount of money. Everything we do is extremely budget constrained. So if there are roads where maybe there's never been an accident, but we're considering putting a bike lane in there, like a protected bike lane in there, we need to make sure that we're using our money to the best extent possible. So that I have not looked at the data in particular about traffic incidents ever, but we need to look at the data, figure out this is the most important thing we can do for reducing fatalities, for maybe car-on-car collisions. Maybe there's some intersection where it's hard to make a right turn because you don't have very much visibility for the cars that are coming. But look at the data and make your decisions based off of the data. That's what I would do.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So with the arrival of light rail in downtown Redmond and Marymore Village, Move Redmond's really focused on increasing access to public transit, just like you were talking about earlier. Do you have any specific ideas that you'd like to see implemented to help people who are a bit further afield in neighborhoods like Education Hill or your own neighborhood where it might be harder to access transit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be multimodal to accommodate, just to be inclusive of everybody. And yeah, so that could be electric scooters, that could be electric bikes, that could just be more bus stops in neighborhoods, like near neighborhoods like that. I know I read the Redmond's comprehensive plan, right? I think they have a goal where the majority of Redmond residents are within half a mile of the public transit of like a bus stop by 2050, which would be wonderful, right? But then we also have to accommodate maybe folks who have disabilities or folks for whom like taking a bike or a scooter is not as easy of an option, and that's why like a service like Bellevue that can come pick you up would be great. But yeah, we just really need multimodal forms here because people have different needs.
Absolutely, yeah. So you also mentioned this, but funding for transportation has been more constrained recently than it has in some previous years. If the city of Redmond faced a budget shortfall for transportation projects, how would you approach solving this problem?
So I mean, the state has given us some tools with regards to this, right? Like Redmond voted last year on the transportation benefit district. But something like that, to be completely honest, it's not ideal, right? Where we're increasing sales tax in the city to help fund transportation infrastructure. It's just a bad tax to do a good thing. And those are the kinds of difficult decisions on council that you have to make. I think in terms of new revenue, generally the revenue I would look at is any kind of progressive revenue, right? Because what does the majority of our general fund come from? Like the $339.6 million general fund, property taxes, sales taxes, these are two of our most regressive forms of tax. I think maybe we should start looking into something like a vacancy tax, for instance, where if there are homes that are not being used the majority of the year, we should institute a tax on that. Or we should look into luxury taxes for folks who own maybe like more than 3 homes in the city. I mean, these are also tools that can be used to help us solve our housing crisis. But I think funding needs to come from those sources rather than an increase in sales or property taxes as has been done. But that specific one, that was a very difficult decision on council to make, and that was the only tool the state gave us, or state gave the city for that.
Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate that. If there is a transportation project that becomes really heated and controversial, what is your approach to listening to the community and kind of dealing with that heat?
That's a great question. So Redmond conducts a survey. I was just looking at the results a little while ago. Every year, right? It's a statistically significant survey of the population on what their biggest needs are, what their biggest concerns are in Redmond. I think we need to, if an issue becomes heated, we probably should conduct a similar kind of survey with regards to this specific issue. But I think that everyone deserves to have their voice heard, right? And I think that is something that's so fundamental that, I will, like, if there's a public hearing that goes on for hours and hours, like, I want that. I want to go to all of the different people who have an opinion on this and meet them where they are at, right? And I think it also comes from a first principles approach where we need to look at basic questions that are hard facts about this project. Like, how much will this project cost? What savings environmentally do we get from this project? Maybe what savings on a traffic basis, what savings on a transportation basis do folks get from this project? Look at the numbers on everything and make your decision based off of that. Because if the numbers work out, then I think it's fine. But you can't lose track of the most important things inside of a project being heated is my perspective. So first principles kind of approach, right? What are your goals here? Why do we even do transit, right? It's because it saves people time. It reduces congestion on the roads. It's so much better for the environment. These are the things why we do transit in the first place. So we need to look at how does this project actually help us meet these goals, and especially compared to other transportation projects. Let's say that this project costs a whole lot of money, but we're not actually saving that much in carbon emissions on the whole from it. Maybe this is probably not the best project in that case, right? But we just need to look at the numbers on that. Yeah.
All right. So how would you ensure that transportation planning in Redmond reflects the needs of people of all ages, incomes, and abilities?
Yep. So that kind of ties into the thing about disabilities, right? Where yeah, let's say you can't take a scooter to get to transit. Obviously, we need to be able to accommodate you as well. And I think this goes back to talking to the community, talking to folks who are in wheelchairs, talking to folks on every side of the agility spectrum. I also think it needs to include more communication with younger people, right? Because transit is free for folks under 18, but I'm 19 years old. I have a lot of friends who are still in high school or maybe 18, 19, or even younger, and a lot of them don't actually know that, right? And I feel like that's something that needs to be communicated more. Is hey, if we're going to get ice cream somewhere and we're going to downtown Bellevue, we can just take the bus. We don't have to do anything. Maybe that means mailing out all the Orchid cards premeditatedly to anyone who turns 14 years old in the city. But just being more proactive in that approach with communication, and really going out, conducting community surveys to assess the needs in the community, making sure that everyone is able to get access to transit in some way.
Yeah. Just so you know, Move Redmond does distribute free Orca cards.
Okay.
We do it once a week at the library, at the resource fair on Wednesdays, and then also at the Together Center also on Wednesdays. So
okay.
Yeah, we give out those cards and also community events that we're at. So yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I remember my dad stood in line at one of events and he was I got Orchid cards. Yeah,
yes. That's great. We love to hear that. So speaking about folks with disabilities, the Week Without Driving is coming up. And so the Week Without Driving was started in Washington State by Disability Rights Washington. And we found that 1 out of 4 folks in Washington state does not have a driver's license. So when we're looking at transportation, we need to think about the folks who are non-drivers. And Week Without Driving is a week where we challenge elected officials and decision makers to get around for a whole week without driving, to understand what many people without access to a driver's license face in our communities. That is happening this year from September 29th to October 5th with America Walks, and Move Redmond is hosting a few events here. We would love to know if you could commit to doing a week without driving.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right when my school starts back again, so I will be taking transit to UW, and I really don't drive my car at all that week, like in general, during school very much, so that wouldn't even be a huge
Awesome. That's great.
change, yeah.
We're also going to be doing a walk and talk on October 2nd, and we invite you to come participate to that. That'll be starting at the Redmond Senior and Community Center, and then we'll be talking about the first last mile connections to the downtown Redmond light rail station.
Awesome. Yeah.
So we invite you to join that.
Perfect.
Well.
Can you send me like a okay?
Yeah, we'll send you all the info. And for folks watching, we'll send you the info too. And let's see. So one final question, what are your other priorities for council? They might be related to transportation or other issues that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, one thing that I'm really passionate about, so I serve on the Human Services Commission in Redmond, and one thing that I'm very passionate about is using technology to expand accessibility around human services, right? Because I think that is a huge component too, is not just the services we provide, but enabling folks to get access to these services, particularly folks maybe for whom English isn't the first language, because it's difficult enough to find resources when English is your first language, when I'm having to look these things up. But if it's not, you're in trouble, and these are the folks who disproportionately need those resources, right? So I want to build out systems on the redmond.gov website where, folks can go and type in their native language and get access to like emergency shelter or anything like that. I really, really want to expand that kind of accessibility because I believe we have the capability with technology now to do something like that. And I also think that we are so incredibly budget constrained right now at every level of government. Something like this would not cost, on the order of magnitude scale, that much to build out, but could have a tremendous impact. So that's something I really, really would want to do. And I have a lot of other things as well. Like, I want to make it easier for us to build like any type of housing, ADUs, for instance, on property to solve our housing crisis. We have very, very ambitious goals for housing, right? Building out 29,760 new units by 2050. But that requires a diversity of housing forms. And one way we can add a trickle into filling up this bucket is, I think, making our permitting process easier for ADUs, maybe pre-approved ADUs like Kirkland has. But I have a lot of things. I could ramble on, but I have a lot of things I want to bring to council. But one very specific thing is, accessibility around human services.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated this interview, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.